I'd like to talk to you just briefly about something in the Buddhist philosophy which is called the three poisons and the concept of antidote. Back in the days of the Buddha, life expectancy was not what it is today. Very few people had this wonderful gift of life and able to live as many years as some of us, myself included, have already accomplished. They died earlier. Life expectancies was in the 40s. If they were, that was considered a good age back then. So why was that? Well, it was because there were lots of things around that just were antithetical to good health. If you're aware of the Theravadan tradition of not eating any meals after noon or 1 o'clock, it's because of a practice they had back then, not about trying to rise above our bodily needs, but it was a health issue. There was no refrigeration. So if you can imagine, as the monks went around for their alms round and collecting the offerings from the people in the area, they never knew what was going into the bowl. And what went into the bowl by 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening was not probably something that would be overly healthful for the monks to consume. So the rule was kind of established to protect the health of those around. And some of the most valued gifts that were given to the monks at that particular time were medicines to help with regards to stomach issues and dysentery and things like that, because those things were going to arise whether they were very, very careful or not. And so these were treasured, these medicines that were given to counteract some of the health issues that might arise from what they ate or how their surroundings might have affected their health at that particular point in time. In Buddhism, we have this thing called the poisons. And you'll hear them numbered depending on how people want to dissect them in different ways. But for me, my simple mind can't remember a whole lot of things. So I drop them down into three particular areas. And those three poisons are considered to be greed, anger, and ignorance. You know, the Buddha taught, one of his very first teachings was life means unhappiness or displeasure. And then he goes about giving us, some other areas in the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path that kind of lead us to this opportunity to avoid some of this unpleasantness of dissatisfaction or this unhealthfulness of our spirit, body, breath, and mind. So the concepts, I don't know about you, but I love this joke. It's a very old joke about, you go to see the doctor and you go to the doctor and you say, hey, when I do this with my wrist, it hurts. And so the doctor turns around and says, well, don't do that. And that's kind of what the Buddha was teaching us with regards to the poisons, this concept of greed and anger and ignorance. We all have it, where it's part of our nature, it's part of the way we think, it's part of the thoughts that we have in our mind that bring these things about. And there are some natural antidotes to these particular types of poisons. If we look at greed, they say that the antidote to greed is generosity. But again, like many of the things that can be dissected, greed can be dissected in many different ways. I would say that probably most of us sitting here would not view ourselves as greedy people. I think if we saw somebody that was starving, we would feed them. I think if we saw somebody that was naked, we would help try to clothe them, to house them. I think we would do that. I think that's the nature of our Buddha nature that is arising through the bodhicitta of our practice. However, maybe our partners in life have had a bad day, and so have we, and so we don't share ourselves when they come home and they say, "Honey, I've had a bad day." Yeah, me too. What's for dinner? And so that's kind of a greediness of our own nature of taking into consideration ourselves. So these poisons, these things exist in many, many different ways of our life. If we look at anger, I would say that most of us have experienced anger in our lives. And some of us have anger that continues to burn in our bodies and in our nature because of the way we were treated or the way we think. And this anger kind of just is like a smoldering fire. And it leads us into many, many different displeasures in our lives, this unhappiness that exists. We're not all just angry people. We're not out there to beat people up or to naturally hurt people, but we hurt people all the time in our ability to not recognize this antidote to anger. And the antidote to anger is obviously our compassionate nature, the way that we can use compassion to overcome our anger. And then there's ignorance. Boy, do I live in that world. Ignorance, ignorance, ignorance. My mind constantly recognizes that I was ignorant. There's somebody that comes to my Sangha and also comes to this Sangha that I don't see here this morning. But the other day I was just kind of teasing, and I tend to have a teasing nature sometimes. If you ever watch Cozen and I go at each other sometimes, that's loving teasing. We're not there to hurt each other. But this member of my Sangha had to come to me afterwards, and you said, this teasing that you're applying in certain situations hurts me. Well, the very, very first thing I said was, well, I'm so proud of you for having the strength to come to me and share that and tell me about that. And then let me tell you, I am so sorry. My intention was not to hurt you. And yet in my ignorance, in my own limited way of seeing things, I did. And so what's the antidote to ignorance? Well, it's wisdom. It's waking up. It's understanding that sometimes the way I see it or the way I apply it is not necessarily the most helpful way to do it. And so in these poisons and in these antidotes to these poisons, it's more than the doctor saying, just don't do this. It won't hurt so much. I get it. But there are ways of reducing the suffering by the practice that we are following. Understanding the Noble Eightfold Path and how it all applies in our lives. Sitting in meditation and having the moments of awareness come into our life, and all of a sudden we have this waking up. I didn't mean that to be teasing, but it was. And not to deny it, and not to live any further in that particular ignorance. So we've got great tools, we've got great medicines, if you will, great antidotes to these poisons in the world and in our lives. We'll all continue to suffer them, we'll all continue to get better at them, because we are the people who recognize that the teachings of the Buddha and the teachings of Christ and the teachings of Muhammad are far beyond what's written in the books and far beyond what is taught in religious consequences today. They hit to the very core and nature of our humanity, and it allows us to be better people through the way we think, the way we act, and the way we love. Thank you, Sangha, for listening this morning.